Thank you for joining the Montana Book Festival for this virtual event. My name is Lauren Korn, the festival's director. Today, in partnership with the Great Falls Festival of the Book and the Great Falls Public Library, we're here with poet Sarah Aronson and Mark Gibbons. Sarah Aronson is a Montanan by way of Alaska. Her debut collection of poems, And Other Bodiless Powers, won the 2018 New American Poetry Prize. She is the former host and producer of Montana Public Radio's The Right Question and the current host of Shared State. Mark Gibbons is the author of 10 collections of poetry. His latest, Mostly Cloudy, is his fourth book from Foothills Publishing. In 2018 to 2019, Gibbons edited 2 poetry collections for Drumlummon Institute, Moving On, the Last Poems of Ed Leahy, and Summer Lightning, Poems by Mary Laura Wilson. He is a 2013 recipient of the Artist Innovation Award from the Montana Arts Council and has worked with MAC advising Poetry Out Loud, the national recitation competition since its inception. Gibbons lives in Missoula, Montana with his wife Pam and their 2 cats where he continues to teach. Welcome, Sarah and Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I unfortunately, I'm down to 1 cat. But so it goes. I had to put one down. The title, I mean, Sarah, the title of this is In the Blood. What is it again? Primal and
Chosen Landscapes.
And Chosen Landscapes. Primal and Chosen Landscapes. And we kind of, came up with the whole plan for this toward the Great Falls Book Festival back when we were actually going to be going somewhere together to read in person before that got shut down. And, we kind of came up with that title from a couple of different directions. And my direction on it was the first 3, or the first part of it is the in the blood phrase. And so I'm just going to read you this poem to kind of kick this thing off, and then I'll let Sarah continue with the rest of that title for this thing. But this poem is an old poem of mine, but I wrote this poem, a long time ago, and I've lived here all my life in this area and close to Missoula, and almost everybody I grew up with, or a lot of them, 50% or more, were all leaving the state. They were all just had to go somewhere else for work or whatever, and so I was still here, one of the few still here trying to work for a living. And I this poem somehow came out of all that. It's in 2 parts. It's called In the Blood. Waving beside the mullein, spindly scarecrows of the borrow pit and shale cut slopes, cattails beckon me like fingers to settle with red-winged blackbirds rocking on stalks green from rain. Billowing clouds hang low, white, black, and gray, curling twispy as an old man's beard. Perhaps my father's, gone now 7 years. Have these shadowed blue mountains put a spell on me? All I know I don't understand, the cottonwood grove on the 9-mile oxbow, a coyote pausing at the edge of the road and smiling before padding up the draw. These nesting swallows that pop from the clay cut bank. Somehow this ground inhabits me. For no reason I refuse to leave, like the ponderosa snapped off at its trunk. No wind, no storm can drive me away from this place I call my journey. My grandfathers crossed an ocean, a continent, to settle this land of rattlesnakes, sagebrush, and snow. What was it that drew them and snuffed wanderlust in one generation? Maybe the endless fields freckled by sweet wildflowers, low ceiling of sky, abundance of water. Could it have been the blackness of moonless nights, a reflection of their immigrant souls? For some time, I have told myself I am comfortable with these mysteries. The lion on my porch, raccoons in my yard, and decapitated house cats littering the alley. All my stories are here. Why do I think if I left, I would leave them behind as if I could lose dirt and memory like luggage. When I'm alone, I hear voices whisper. I'm afraid of losing my grip. 2. Right now, I float the Clark Fork, climb plateau in my mind, follow the game trail that leads me up Gobbler's Knob and back to the pact I made with the deer. My hands covered with his blood, slippery and hot, I worked the knife inside his chest, cut free the entrails and claimed his bones. Before I was through, his agate black eye faded milky gray blue. I cannot shake it, my pledge to a dead deer. Like my dad's ashes I poured into this ground. I need this story to haunt my dreams, to explain in words what I can't, my attachments to dirt and blood and ghosts. The buttercups and arrowleaf balsam root, dewy on the rocky hillside, wood smoke hovering in a stand of lodgepole pine, cold creek water gulped and swallowed, slaking an August afternoon thirst, distant gunshots up Faley Basin, the squeaking crunch of snow under my boot sole, followed by silence only broken by blood ringing in my ears. The osprey have returned to their nest. Even they would move on if the river ran dry. Have I become the blood of the deer, tied to a rhythm I cannot name? Stay, stay the course, the buck whispers. We are waiting in the river, your father and me. We are shimmering in the aspen leaves. Listen to our voices, the water and the wind. Close your eyes and you will see. So there you go. That's a little in the blood thing. I'm gonna throw this back at Sarah and force her to read something now.
So Mark, I can already tell we're going to have fun. And I also think that our listeners can make a drinking game out of every plant, specific plant reference and bird reference. Okay. So if you hear an osprey or a red-winged blackbird or an aspen tree, bottoms up.
Sounds good.
I just want to start by thanking Lauren Korn and the Montana Book Festival for inviting us, because we are like transplants from the Great Falls Book Festival. And also I just want to acknowledge that I'm reading from Missoula, Montana, which is the Aboriginal territory of the Salish and Kalispel people. And I'm grateful to live here. And Mark, thanks for reading with me. The last time we read together was after a blues band. And that was a hard act to follow. And over Zoom is a hard thing to do, but I'm glad it gets to be with you. So
Me too.
I'm reading from this collection of poems and Other Bodiless Powers. So I'm going to hit the mullein plant right off the bat in echo of yours, and then 2 blood poems. This is called Siloed. As if not everything had rusted, dry wheat bent from seed, a split rail fence, its 3 crows panting. Each mountain division was lit up or about to be. Summer staggered, antlers locked. Lamb's ear and mullein root suckled. I stood beneath a lodgepole rib cage, smoke blind. If you come back as the sky dressed as sky, I'll be the hacksaw, a cricket grafting its wings. That was from that wicked forest fire season of 2017. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I feel really grateful that it's blue skies, clear air right now.
2
Yeah.
years in a row.
2, I know. I'm like counting it. Here's some more trees, all right? Seam of light through a thicket of night trees. Granite dolled up in hydrogen. I name a planet already named by a man. Distend my soft core, trying to call your homelessness home. Benign nevus of my eye, how long can I stand on one leg? when even my brother is ions, blood cells, every form of suffering? When will I know you won't need a body that is mine? Letting blood be sap and rain in my mouth. Take my right hand, left hand, turn my palms up, draw a card. And the last blood poem is the first poem of this book. And then I'll toss it back to you, Mark, okay? If not thirst. If not thirst, then this blood crescent welling in a trout's small eye, the heart so near the jaw. The water tasted thin. I kept wrapping my hand around my own throat. That same spot on the river called me back. For weeks, it was meltwater, then forest fire, a patch of sun scalping golden trees. Culling the understory from the berries, white spiders crawl out. A crow from the southwest at sunset. We exchange in murmurations. I take in what your good eyes render, press my finger to the page folds, becomes the stalk of grass I put in my mouth to whistle you back.
Nice. I don't know. There's, as I was telling Lauren earlier when we were chatting, is like there's just way too much to try to do here, and I rather than just stick closely to the book, which is this is the new book, the book that we just published here, Mostly Cloudy. This book also is full of photographs. The cover image and the photographs inside were taken by Kurt Wilson, a photographer here in Missoula. So it's kind of a nice thing to leaf through along with while you're reading poems. And I'll get to reading a few out of that before we're done here. But other things that I want to say, I wind up writing, I guess, a lot of poems for people. That's just kind of, we talked about this not too long ago. We had a conversation not too long ago. So this is a lot of rerun for Sarah, unfortunately.
I love it. I love it.
But I it's a lot of my poems have dedications on them because I bounce back or toward or in reflection, or I'm inspired by another person. And this person was an old friend of mine who just recently passed away. He was a poet. He lived in Big Arm, Montana. His name was David Dale. And David attended the University of Montana graduate writing program back in the early 90s or late 80s, somewhere in there. And I met him up in Ronan. And one of the things I really loved about David's work, if you've never read David, you should check him out. He's in the library at the university and around here and there, probably still in some bookstores. But he wrote in a child's voice most often. That was his preferred poem was in a child's voice. And I was never even came close to being as good at that as he is. But this was a childhood memory, and I dedicated this poem to David Dale. So I'm going to read this. It's a little bit of an older poem. It's called From the Ashes of Erection. The fall I turned 11, I rose in the dark. It came in a vision before sleep, the board fort. I'd build it inside that corner of the Milwaukee Railroad's right-of-way fence up the hill behind my house. I scrounged lumber from Dewald's woodpile, 1x12s, 1x8s, 1x6s. Swiped 3 sheets of rusty corrugated tin. My friends brought hammers, a shovel. The 2 fence walls went up quick and strong, nailed to posts, rails, and braces. We dug a trench to secure the back wall and sunk a pole I'd unearthed from chokecherry duff to tie it all together. The east side door, a pup tent tacked to the roof. Inside, 1 candle lit and warmed us. It was a secret we vowed to keep, but then we decided to let Johnny in. His dad had stacks of men's magazines. Things got out of hand when Chadwick came with the nudist colony news. That crowning jewel made us infamous. Bus kids skipped their routes for a peek at nonchalant naked men and women playing volleyball and ping pong, pantomiming sing-alongs and hanging out at barbecues, seemingly unaware of boobs and Peters and pubic hair staring them in the face. Most of the pictures were black and white, but the centerfold languished in living color. A brunette goddess, our pink Madonna, nothing but skin and scant hair everywhere from her neck down to her downy rose. Our peep show was a mecca for prepubescent boys. Even some junior high kids admired our shrine until the 6th grade girls found out. One Sunday afternoon, we were all playing football. They sneaked in and tore our fort apart. What depth of cruelty burns books, defaces art? They pinned a mustache and goatee on our Aphrodite, inked in her nipples, blackened 2 of her teeth. Those little vixens gave her cartoon voices. You nasty boys, shame on you. Do your mommies know you're looking at me? One of them even peed on our only Playboy. After that, hardly anybody came. In the fort, I'd hunker down on the ground, brave the rumbling trains, smell the weeds, and listen to the wind. That cheeky prank backfired on them. I discovered my phoenix in the fire. I liked it alone, a solitude in earshot of home, that place where I listened to myself. Lots of forts when you're a kid, right? I'll read one more since I'm here, and then I'll throw it back at you. And this is stumbling along in the line of people again. And this is for an old friend, poet, and mentor of sorts. And the title of it is Old Poet Gone. He squints at receding snow up Hellgate Canyon. Blue sky, the raven has returned. Insists he go outside, offer up his skeletal remains. The poet watches warily from his dark cave, ponders the ethics of suicide, that emergency exit left to us when the house is burning down. It's a comfort to know that door's not locked. He's a telegram stopped in an online world. The poet's growing tired of cigarettes and pain, swallowing words that have lost their bite. An old bear starves when his teeth are gone. Night will come, the clouds, the rain. Rilke, the pills are on the TV tray. Quiet under unpaid bills. He watches the door. There's no question it will open someday. Maybe tomorrow his daughter will come, fill the white space beyond the dash. The poet lives but sleeps all he desires. His cane rests propped against the bed or chair. Should the moon stir his blood to throb, call him to stand, turn the knob, and choose. I'm also known for my uplifting poems.
Well, that was quite a contrast, Mark.
I thought so.
I don't think well, I know for certain I don't have anything like the first poem, but when I was sitting with my book this morning, I realized I got to read dedication poems because that's one of your gifts. So I'm really pleased that I'm going to read like the only poem in my book that has a dedication.
Right.
And it's for my brother who worked on the Turkish-Syrian border for a while doing conflict management work. And our family was worried for him. And so I got to write this poem in thinking about him. It's called The 45th Parallel for Glenn in Gaziantep. Raw ends of linen. We stood at the true midline near a great seam of earth, ripped apart, tracks in parched dirt, a trilling canopy. We stirred creamed honey into yogurt. I asked you to name the body of water. Too many lakes in the brain, you said. Now you're talking orchids and apricots, makeshift counterbalances to the assignment you were given. The border war continues. Our father wrote, sometimes work is just that. Like taxidermy, life bears a hollow resemblance. Animal bodies clutter every droning highway leading out of this valley. I drive south with the promise of new latitudes. Think of you sketching your other hand blind. How is it I've just found the atlas of your handwriting? When Mark and I were talking about the subtitle of this reading, I have to cop that it is stolen from the Jack of all trades writer, Joe Wilkins. And Mark was like, what the hell does this even mean? And I was like, oh, well, I stole it. And it means something very profound to me because I'm not from Montana. I'm from Alaska. And Alaska lives in me. It haunts me. And Montana is alive to me in different kinds of ways. So I'm going to read two Alaska poems. So here's the Primal Landscape, Mark. I'll give it to you. And there's a little bit of a child perspective in here. So there's no Playboy magazines, but maybe you'll hear something else, okay? We'll see if I can do this. I got to take a really deep breath in order to read this one. It's called Amalgamate. I surface aspirate blue, the mother of pearl edging on a button blanket, cedar strips steamed, then bound, a bent wood box cupping tidal foods, limpets and mussels, red ribbon seaweed and sea cucumber. Swaddled in the duff and mold of a life-size eagle nesting tree before the museum is raised for asbestos and breaking fire code, where the pallor of my waist is first mentioned by the gear shift hand of a boy. I come mesomorphic from the inherited hands of milkers, fruit pickers, the spawn of Chechacos who steadied a single wide against the Willowa under the loom of Thunder Mountain's chalked ridgeline. Termination dust arriving each September, sometimes earlier. This season, school children make fish camp, mouth gunash chish, and unflinching elocution of strange things done in the midnight sun under whiteout gymnasium lights to offset 18 hours of permanent dark. The PE teacher slumps over Seagrams at the Eagle's Nest bar, watching trawlers in Auk Bay Harbor while algae proofs the anchor chains. Tomorrow, he will set up the two-legged high kick with a wiffle ball hung from baling twine to the backdrop of slicked-up seabirds in Valdez and someone's father explaining how crude oil unsettles over saline. And then I'll read this other one, Mark, and then it's back to you. This is Potlatch, 1988. Say the fish didn't run and the berries grew in hard. Your traps wouldn't set and the dye refused to take. The blubber soured. Your woman miscarried. Even then, you'd be spared, called into the dim womb of cedar. We were there too, holding red-checked fry baskets from the bar next door.
Nice. your primal landscape, reminded me of when you threw in that little bit of Sam. It reminded me of my introduction, sort of, to the idea of the Great White North was through Robert Service, through those poems
Yeah.
that my dad used to read, and those old sourdough poems and all those tales. And it was like, wow, that was a landscape, you know. I mean, obviously it was mythological almost or whatever, but I knew it had really strong foundations in reality.
Yeah.
And so it did transport you in ways that you want good literature, I guess, to do. So I got to go to the North Country when I was a kid, but I never got cold. I got cold enough in Montana, I guess. Yeah. So what do I want? I'll read this just for kicks. The another thing that popped up was while you were reading that was just the references to animals on the highway and all of that we deal with. You know, I mean, every year when you hear the number of like roadkill deer in the city of Missoula, that just blows your mind. It's hundreds, you know.
Wow.
And you think about the numbers of animals that are killed all the time as we're busy running around in this country. This poem just came to mind, so I'll just read it. It's in this book, this mostly cloudy book. It's called Behaviorism. The crippled doe hobbled across the street, twin fawns scampering behind. The scars on her right flank and ribs indicated more trouble than a bum leg. And I don't know why, but I was reminded of the day my mother dropped me off to catch a ride with some folks traveling to Wyoming. Having graduated the week before, I was heading off for the summer to work in a VA hospital as a psychiatric aide, studying abnormal psychology. At 17, I was excited to be leaving home. Since grade school, my mother and me had weathered my dad's descent into a red-eyed hurricane of booze. I told myself I was going to find a way to save him from himself. Of course, that mission took me away from her, that trip all sons must make, but I wasn't prepared for it. That goodbye, her clean break, the quick hug and peck, the tsunami of emotion that spun her, sent her running for the car, one hand up and waving, the other covering her mouth to muffle, hold back the wave, that wail all animals release when something they love dies. I didn't know then our time was over, nor that mothers carry a stony weight inside, an odd burden they grow accustomed to, like hunger or pregnancy, similar to holding a child on the hip, sun up to sundown, what calls for their milk and full attention. They take those blood phantoms with them to the ground, like a doe bedding her fawns. And I'll just read this because it's right next to the other one. And it takes us into summer. And since it is summer, what's left of summer, it's supposed to be hot in the next few days. This is a poem that I wrote, again, a dedication poem. They're all dedication poems. This one was for my friends Robin and Jeff. It's called Summer Days. 80 degrees, a slight breeze, blue sky, bird calls, butterflies and bees, a perfect day to celebrate. Though surely love survives, thrives in any weather, desire demands heat. Lust wants it all now, like this July tongue licking thighs to flame. Love does what it says it will because the promise is a bargain made with itself. It is what it believes. True love cannot be taken back. Once given, it is passed along. The only way to get more is to give it away. Like a fan creates a vacuum, to stop loving stops love from coming in. And without love, there is no dance, no song. No one cares once love is gone, lost. We are going to die sooner than we think. So why stumble like zombies craving meat and brains? Hearts may break, but love remains if we can forgive and love ourselves. The world will follow suit. A heart played calls for a heart. That's the trick. Letting go allows love to flow in. Always lead Trump and shoot the moon. Now, that last line has forever been ruined. The poem was probably written, what, like 5 years ago, maybe 6, 7 years ago, something like that. And the son of a bitch has been trumped. Oh, never mind.
So, what's the, I want to end on a happier note. What's the line again? Like, without love, there is no dance. Or when love is gone, there is no dance.
Like a fan creates a vacuum, to stop loving stops love from coming in. And without love, there is no dance, no song.
I would like you to record that on my voicemail. So I could listen to it forevermore. Mark, your first poem took me to my other life, which as a psychotherapist, which is my daytime job.
Yeah.
So this is about the chosen landscape of Missoula, Montana. You might recognize some scenes of this poem. Solitude of ether. All day, women come and go from my office. Build her a nesting place in safety. The gloom burns off from the waist down. Warblers hook their tiniest songs to fog. This time of year I nurse wet hair. New crusts of mud form around the legs of dead grass. The nights come to us singly. The cold has told me to give up. If only I could hear your voice. Before runoff, a river otter begins wringing out dirt. I was aloft and marching across the town's only bridge when someone called to ask what kept my attention.
Nice.
And then I want to skip to two little watery poems from the Montana scene. Let's see. Here's a little short one called Contour Line. And I don't know, Mark, if you've been up in the Mission Mountains lately, but one of my favorite lakes in the whole world is up there. And this little scene took place there. Contour Line. A cairn is hunger engineered. You take the goat track. Visible roots clench the lake bed. I swim out to milk the sky, bed down near a man I do not know. He pleads to let his dog sniff me so he won't be kept awake all night from the begging. I consider which part of myself to offer. The ant, a single flick away. Understand, you have been gifted this solitude once. Does it matter I wished for loons? The resolve of your tongue like snow. And then here's my, what I'm going to call my commercial love poem that ended up on the back of a Montana magazine, a glossy magazine. So
Right.
Here you go. As a consequence of moving forward, the river bottom circles your ankles downstream. My fingers wrap around either side of hawthorn to steady against runoff. Stoneflies break into shaky flight. I lay orange peels beside their split gray husks. Lose sight of you, mending into a wide hold, casting with the favor of wind. I have married a dozen fish already, hefted my share of canoe. Battened on a creek, I was only trying to read the sky on the water. No, the water behind the shadowed boulder, where an ancient steelhead is swaying, swaying, but holding.
All right. I'm just like rocking in the water here. I'm just about, it's quite nice. So I'm going to have to find something. I've got to find some water. And I think I know where this is at. Hopefully it's the right, yeah. This is just a little something I wrote a while back, and I actually was right around the time that Dave Brubeck died, and you know, being the dedication man, Dave's name is on this poem, but it's more of a water poem. It's called Stone Drum, a river meditation. And it came to be oddly enough, because I was contacted, it was kind of one of those contracted things that somebody was asking, could you do something along the lines of, and it was a project involving the music department and the science department. They were studying stoneflies. And so anyway, that's where this poem the origins of the poem came from. It's called Stone Drum, a River Meditation. Water, everything, every living thing is hardwired to the sound of water, flowing water, from the trickling of melting glaciers to the thundering of Niagara Falls. We're all drawn, all thirst toward its damp promise, be it pool, puddle, or brook. We wouldn't exist without water. It seems obvious we invented music, listening to rivers and streams, the pouring rain, dripping eaves, observing nature's changing hypnotic ways, our preoccupations with weather, lapping waves, the howling wind, campfire embers, and licking flames. Always we're tuned to snapping sounds, screech scratchings out of sight, day or night, those ongoing symphonies of survival we recognize. Each time is like the first time. Archetypal water drums a baseline gravitational call to ride the A train, thump blooping like Brubeck inside our veins, hauling us back to Duke's blues on a black-eyed piano C. Kodo's song, softly killing that old misconception Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons claim silence is golden. Complete silence is death. Dry, waterless death. The sound of water sings us home, wet, to our first best place, the amniotic bath, sloshing bones, dreaming skin, swallow and swim. Stoneflies crawl for muddy miles deep underground, following the percussive sound of erosion, water over gravel and sand, tumbling boulders, tearing at the landscape, uprooting trees, floating sticks, leaves, fallen debris. Scouring and pounding these streambed vibrations shake nymphs to rise and dance, make seed, then feed whitewater trout anxiously awaiting the feast of flies. When the runoff is done and cloudy creek currents settle clear as glass, riffles rattling to a clattering roar, the stream song invitations, those skeleton husks littering the shore, announce like It's a boy, cigars, dinner has taken wing. Trout feed fat in eddies then, when stoneflies flit above the spray of that deafening, breathy fast water racing across rocky ground, straight water pushing toward ocean and sky, creating a rhythm reminiscent of Lionel Hampton's vibraphone, or maybe Mingus plucking out liquidy hollow tones, ebbs and flows, rivers riffing solos, splashing crescendos. If water were a stage, some musical metaphor praising the stonefly's swan song, we'd see it feeding a flash of rainbow tail, clenched tight in the cutthroat's jaws, now stiffening in the bottom of a creel. That fisherman might wash blood from his hands, finger the soft bones, wings buzzing his ears as he watches a dipper hopping stone to stone, inhaling it all, the river's melody, tympanic meditations on a dream. Water, water. I'm going to read this before I forget about it. One of the things that Lauren mentioned early on was that I had been involved with a couple of editing projects with Drumlummon Institute, and the last one last year, a collection of poems by Mary Laura Wilson called Summer Lightning came out, and she had never published a book before, and Drumlummon agreed that they were interested in doing it, so I helped her get all that stuff together. And she was a good friend. She passed away earlier this year, not too long ago. And this is a poem that I dedicated, of course, to her and wrote at the time that she finished her first book of poems. And it's called Hearts and Spades, and it's for Mary Laura. A glance at the clock, the one in my head, read in increments of memory and calendar years, reminds me I am now a member of the Senior Citizens Club. And in that revered order of accumulated wisdom, where elders wait in perpetuity, I find my instincts for herding kids and dogs has evolved into monitoring my fellow gray-haired friends. So when I don't hear from someone whom I regularly hear from, death is more than a possibility. If and when they surface and smile at me, my pre-panic elevated heart rate jumps to joke, "I thought you were dead." No explanations necessary. We sit down and cut for the deal. I watch them shuffle the deck, notice the texture of their hands, the stiff fingers, their skin, and mine. I gather up the cards, holding them a little closer to my chest, and catch them looking at me. I smile, take my time, slowly arranging my hand. We both know there's no hurry here. Waiting is a key part of the game.
That first poem, Mark, it was like stoneflies, husks. Like I was like, oh yeah, we're writing from the same dictionary. The Montana Landscape Dictionary that you get when you are born in the state or arrive in the state, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that a lot of what people come to expect of Montana poetry,
Yeah.
or whatever this region is. I don't know if Alaska is lumped into that. Of course they're not, because they're a totally different area. But people think about that, places like that, remote places, in terms of the landscape. Obviously, the landscape is huge.
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's a life or death sort of thing, or at least it has been in the past. Maybe not so much now, but it can be.
Right.
And so and when I hear a lot of that in your work. Uh, uh, it was funny. I just read that 45th parallel poem before you read it, and
Oh, funny.
that was one of the poems that wasn't as loaded up with all that stuff
Right.
of the
Right.
landscape. And of course, whenever I hear that stuff, yeah, I've got a bunch of those tucked away too. They're maybe not as thick as yours, because these people keep creeping in and out of all my world all the time. Just haunting me.
Thank goodness you have humans in your book. I know. I feel like my writing is often like the Alaska understory, where you cannot bushwhack your way through, and um,
It sounds beautiful.
it's very thick. I'm gonna read two more poems, Mark, and then I'm gonna call my part of the reading done. So maybe you can take us out with your beautiful reading voice. But I'm going to take us to Texas, because when you are raised as an Alaskan, you are taught to that your natural born enemy is a Texan, and Texas is your competition in life. And I had a chance to go down to Big Bend State Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park in West Texas. And God damn it, I fell in love with that place. So here's to that. And it has an expletive for sensitive ears.
Okay.
It's called insulation weathering. Nothing that happens to you in this life is unnatural. The creek maims the road. Border dog lamentations. A mother cloud and her offspring. The hands braiding my hair are my own. Drift of javelina. Ocotillo wags. I bend into the night, half-dressed, argue with you, fuck you rudely on the trail in my mind. Weaken 2 rock slides. What a river knows, it channels at its deepest. A fox gunning from the road. The price of this aloneness is not alone. My brother reads books on birds. Pinned against the flat irons, a wild donkey screams up dawn, as if the land might stay a language between us. Bandolier of stars. It's sometimes difficult, but I try not to expect anything of the sky. And then the last poem I'll read is like a poem that came late in the stage of this book. And it's very much back to my bad habit of landscapey Montana chosen landscape. It's called Flight Patterns, and it's in 3 sections. A warbler neck breaks the band of my fingers, flits off to yellow the sky. That spring, love was a washed out road, fade lines on the wing. Jackknifing, I couldn't back my way into anything. Ribbon lightning, trace precipitation, a life so minor that an ant surprised me, a snake flattened on the road. Raven's throat knocks open. Not just death, but the way light papers the skin. Gold veins the rock where I doused for you. Waterline pressing my thighs into memory. Quiet hours skate above the creek's din, and me always calling from another epoch. Rapture of signal fire, earth limits, not even her highest powers, that type of helplessness, that exact hype. Abstract birth defects promised from my phone, a week without debt scare. there is not a fruit I care to name. Side channeled by the great animator of wind, wild rose, spook of moose calf, we trot in opposite directions against the same thorns. There you have it, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. And I hope your problem continues.
Thanks. My condition.
Yeah, your condition is that you just dropped in to see what your condition is.
Yes, that's right.
So I guess for want of a better direction to lean toward, I'll read a couple of things out of this collection, which is this new book called Mostly Cloudy. I don't know. Let me read. You read something sort of earlier that was somewhat local. I don't remember what that was now. It was when it was your therapist poem, and this is just for a while I was doing deliveries for a business here in town for 4 or 5 years, and this was just stolen as I was driving around town. And now, of course, it's hit the press here recently with the city buying it. So some of you may know this location. It's called Sleepy Inn. Working again, trading your life for money, delivery driving and stopping, picking up and dropping, plotting your route, watching the clock, traffic lights, braking for the oblivious idiot behind the wheel on his cell, and listening to Dylan watching the river flow. Now you sit 8 deep in the left turn lane on Broadway, waiting for the green arrow. When you spy an older woman shuffling along the sidewalk in front of the aging brick motel across the street, circa 1950, her right arm extended to feel for wall, door, or window air conditioner, whatever solid, her makeshift handrail, every other slow-mo step, her fingers or palm touches, then pushes off. Her left arm tightly cradles something in a paper bag to her breast. As she reaches her room door cracked open, she disappears in the dark. When an 86 Chevy Blazer pulls into the lot, then backs into the first diagonal parking spot off the street quick and slick, like he's done it a time or two. A couple with handicapped plates. The driver gets out, shuts the door less than 6 zippity feet from his motel room door. He enters without much trouble. Doesn't look back. His biggest handicap appears to be obesity. When the passenger door opens and a woman slowly slides out, he's already inside. She closes the door to feel her way along the blazer. Coming around the nose, you note the glazed belly of her zip-up hoodie, lime green, and her blue pajama bottoms and white silhouettes of bunnies and carrots. But her feet steal the style show. Those zebra-striped zipper slippers make you smile, say, "Oh, baby, you know what I like." When the light changes, you drive away. Assume she followed him inside to continue their day like you, just trying to get to some kind of social security as soon as you can, if you're lucky enough to make it that far. Maybe there'll be a sleepy inn with cable and a bottomless pot of Boyd's in the office, some retro accommodation your age, where the women outnumber the men 2 to 1, and all the ice you can scoop is free, where they'll run you a tab for liquor, put it on your weekly bill, and deliver till midnight any day of the year. Well, better read One for the Road and I'll read this. I haven't read this yet, and the last book of poems of mine that was done, a friend, couple of friends, Susan Carlson, who's an artist here in Missoula, allowed me to use an art piece of hers, and Chris Latre did the sort of the cover design for it. So, that was the art piece. And she's a very interesting artist. I like what she does. And I first, not first, but I saw a piece of hers that was hanging in one of the galleries downtown a few years ago before all that happened. And the title of it was Gone to the Birds. And so, I mean, this just it reminded me of something, and this poem came out of it. The poem is just called Gone. Cemeteries and ghost towns, abandoned buildings, the dilapidated evidence of lives lived and gone. Broken glass and missing doors, some swollen and jammed to the floor. The rank smells of mildew and stink pigs blend like anthills littered with larch needles and rat shit, mounding along the baseboards. Below the gaping chimney flue, a yellowed stiff pile of catalogs and magazines have welded over time. The outline of a cabinet torn down scars one wall. Another is scrawled with F-U-C-K in all caps and illustrated with a scratch-drawn cock and balls. One tube sock lies on the floor of a dim bedroom, the windows boarded up. A single cot spring rusted to a metal footboard, the wood grain face pierced by 3 bullet holes, is hung in the wall by one leg, punched through beaver board. Out back, the old woodshed stands dramatically close, a frayed rope still hanging from a rafter inside, and a broken claw hammer lies half buried in weeds beside the railroad tie stoop. The outhouse, a one-holer, has lost its roof and reek. The Hills Brothers coffee can holds no spare roll. No one shits here anymore. One story has it, the young woman drowned, swimming in the Clark Fork River, pregnant with her third. It didn't take her husband a full year to follow her off the Rock Creek Road. Everyone knew he'd drown in a bottle. The girls were farmed out to next of kin in the Midwest, taken in like little birds fallen from the nest. But who knows? These headstones are almost 100 years old, so it must be a fairly safe bet. The daughters are gone now too.
Well done, Mark.
What do you
It's so
think?
nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Actually, we didn't get to see each other the last time. We
I
just
know.
that was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you both. That was really, really wonderful. I'm so pleased that I was your one-woman audience on this.
Yes.
One day I hope to be with the both of you in person. You have really great chemistry online. I can only imagine what it's like across a table on a patio drinking.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we'll have to try that with a beverage next year.
Next year, yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed. Anyway.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So thank you both for joining me and your audience today. As a reminder of those of you watching, you can purchase Sarah's and Other Bodiless Powers and Mark's Mostly Cloudy, as well as other books by festival authors at Fact and Fiction Books at www.factandfictionbooks.com. You can purchase festival merchandise at www.montanabookfestival.com. And while you're there, I urge you to donate so we can continue virtual programming like this into the fall and beyond. So again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.